Chemical composition of hair. Hair is composed of protein that grows from cells originating within the follicle. This is where the hair shaft begins. As soon as these living cells form, they begin their journey upward through the hair follicle. They mature in a process called keratinization. As these newly formed cells mature, they fill up with a fibrous protein called keratin, then move upward, lose their nucleus, and die. By the time the hair shaft emerges from the scalp, the cells of the hair are completely keratinized and are no longer living. The hair shaft that emerges from the scalp is a non-living fiber composed of keratinized protein. We used to study keratinization a lot more in depth than what we do now, and the boards eventually moved it off, but it was really interesting as you went through. And some of y'all I've already given the chemistry book as an older book. Give it to work on your pH scale. I know you've had it, and I'm going to lay it out for the rest of y'all, but take time and go through and look at the zone of keratinization, because it's really interesting, and because it shows how our food that we eat is turned into substances through the digestive system and eventually goes into the bloodstream, where a lot of our body cells are fed from and repaired from and all that. But especially with hair, it shows the amino acids beginning to hook back up with each other from the proteins we've ate, and they hook back up end on end. That's our peptide bonds. And it's just a bloody mush to start with as it starts into the zone of keratinization. And that's the only bonds it has to start with are the peptide bonds. And as it moves up, it begins to form the side bonds then, which would be your disulfide and salt and hydrogen bonds. Hair is approximately 91% protein. The protein is made up of long chains of amino acids, which in turn are made up of elements. Y'all remember what an element is? You remember what an element is? It's a pure substance. That's the only thing it is. The elements that make up human hair are carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen, and sulfur. These 5 elements are also the major elements found in skin and nails and are referred to as the Chond's elements. You know that sulfur is present in hair if you've ever smelled any burn, because it stinks. Let's go over our percentage of each one of these elements in the hair, because some of these books are wrong. So I want you to be sure and follow along in your book in case you have the wrong percentages, so I can give you the correct ones. The element carbon, there's 5% in normal hair. The element oxygen, there's 6%. The element hydrogen, there's 17%. And nitrogen, 21%. And sulfur, 51%. The amino acids, which are the units of structure in protein, are linked together end to end like pop beads. The chemical bond that joins amino acids to each other is called a peptide bond, or end bond. A long chain of amino acids linked by peptide bonds is called a polypeptide chain. Polypeptide chains intertwine around each other in a spiral shape called a helix. The cortex, which is the middle layer of the hair, is made up of millions of polypeptide chains. The polypeptide chains are then cross-linked together like a ladder by 3 different types of side bonds, those being your hydrogen bonds, your salt bonds, and your disulfide bonds. These side bonds hold the hair fibers in place and account for the incredible strength and elasticity of human hair. These side bonds are essential to wet sets, thermal styling, permanent waving, and chemical relaxing. If you pull one hair out of your head, you can break it pretty easily. But sometimes when somebody's having a lot of hair cut off, take 20 strands and try to pull and break them. They're very strong. Very, very strong. If you cut some off your mannequin, even take 10 or 15 and you'll find out you're not going to break them quite so easily, because together they are strong. A hydrogen bond is a physical side bond that is easily broken by water or heat. Although individual hydrogen bonds are very weak, there are so many of them they account for about 1/3 of the hair's overall strength. Here we go. A salt bond is also a physical side bond, but it is broken by changes in pH. Salt bonds are easily broken by strong alkali or acidic solutions and account for about 1/3 of the hair's overall strength. A disulfide bond is a chemical side bond that differs greatly from the kind of physical bonding that we see in hydrogen or salt bonds. A disulfide bond joins the sulfur atoms of two neighboring cysteine amino acids to create cysteine. Although there are far fewer disulfide bonds than hydrogen or salt bonds, disulfide bonds are much stronger and they account for about 1/3 of the hair's overall strength. Disulfide bonds are not broken by heat or water. Permanent waves and chemical hair relaxers change the shape of hair by chemically changing the hair's disulfide bonds. Thiopermanent waves break disulfide bonds, which are reformed by thioneutralizers. Hydroxide chemical relaxers break disulfide bonds, which are then converted to lanthanide bonds when the relaxer is rinsed from the hair. The disulfide bonds that are broken by hydroxide relaxers are broken permanently and can never be reformed. And y'all remember about breaking the bonds, and I commented then that I don't like the term breaking because it makes it sound like we're breaking apart. But what happens where they're attached there, we just allow hair to slide into new positions. We weaken the bond an awful lot, especially when we go through lanthanization and we're not able to neutralize it again, and it's in that shape. In our thiochemical waves, we're able to reform it back into that new, now curly shape we have. So I don't really like that break. Let's talk about our bonds a little bit again in comparison. A hydrogen bond is a side bond, is a weak physical bond, can be broken by water or heat, reformed by drying or cooling. Salt bond is also a side bond. It's a weak physical bond. Changes in pH break it, and normalizing pH reforms it. Disulfide bond is a side bond, but it is a strong chemical bond. It can be broken by thioperms and thiorelaxers, and also by hydroxide relaxers. If we break it with a thioperm or thiorelaxer, we can reform it with oxidation in a neutralizer form. If we break it by hydroxide relaxer, that disulfide bond is then converted to a lanthanide bond. Peptide bonds now are N bonds. You notice that's the only N bond we've got. It's a strong chemical bond. Can be broken by chemical depilatories. Cannot be reformed because the hair dissolved. Do y'all understand what a chemical depilatory is? Chemical depilatory is like Neat or Nair hair removers that you put on, and it dissolves the hair and makes it a kind of a soft jelly-like substance, and then you rub it off with the bath cloth or something. That's what a depilatory is. Depilatory's main ingredient is usually sodium hydroxide. Do y'all remember what else is usually sodium hydroxide? We just studied it. What else is main ingredient is sodium hydroxide? Our relaxers. That's a scary thought, that we take the curl out of hair with the same chemical that we dissolve hair. The concentration is a lot greater in our depilatory than it is in a relaxer, but it does tell us if we choose a real strong relaxer and leave it on too long, what's going to happen to the hair. All natural hair color is the result of the pigment located within the cortex. Melanin is the tiny grains of pigment in the cortex that give natural color to the hair. The two different types of melanin are eumelanin and pheomelanin. Eumelanin provides brown and black color to hair. Pheomelanin provides natural hair colors from red and ginger to yellow blonde tones. All natural hair color is the result of the ratio or amount of eumelanin to the amount of pheomelanin, along with the total number and size of the pigment granules. Our wave patterns. The wave pattern of the hair refers to the amount of movement in the hair strand and is described as straight, wavy, curly, and extremely curly. And y'all understand that from your own hair. You know if you've got straight, wavy, curly, or whatever. Wave pattern is the result of genetics and racial background. Although there are exceptions, as a general rule, Asians tend to have extremely straight hair. Caucasians tend to have straight to wavy hair, and African Americans tend to have extremely curly hair. But any of these types of hair can be found on any nationality of person. The wave pattern may also vary from strand to strand on the same person's head. In other words, if you've got real curly hair, you may notice a place or two that is not as curly. It's not uncommon for an individual to have different amounts of curls in different areas of the head. Individuals with curly hair often have straighter hair in the crown and curlier hair in other areas. And I can't speak for that because my hair is very, very straight. I can tell you it is straight all over my head. The wave pattern doesn't change anywhere. It goes from straight to straighter. But I have seen a lot of people with curly hair where it varied a great deal. Several different theories seek to explain the cause of naturally curly hair, but there is no single definite answer that explains why some hair grows straight and other hair grows curly. The most popular theory claims that the shape of the hair's cross-section determines the amount of curl, and this cross-section business is something that cosmetology instructors have fought about in this book for years. Because when we're talking about a cross-section of hair, we're talking about taking a hair like this and splitting it down the middle to get a cross-section. This theory states that the hair with a round cross-section is straight, hair with an oval cross-section is wavy, and hair with a flat cross-section is curly. Although it is true that cross-sections of straight hair tend to be round and curlier hair tends to be more oval, modern microscopes have shown that a cross-section of hair can be almost any shape, including triangular. The shape of the cross-section does not always relate to the amount of curl. And you know what? I don't know about y'all as you read through this, but I frankly don't care about a cross-section. You know, I mean, it's of no use to me in my business. It's not going to help me deal with the hair better or understand what goes on with the chemicals, so why worry about it? Although it is still only a theory, it is now believed that natural curl is the result of one side of the hair strand growing faster than the other. Since the side that grows faster is slightly longer than the slower growing side, tension within the strand causes the long side of the curl around the short side. Hair that grows uniformly on both sides does not create tension and results in straight hair. I can live with that. That sounds, you know, that makes sense. The hair's wave pattern is independent of its other properties. Hair has different diameters from fine to coarse, regardless of its wave pattern. All hair extremely straight to extremely curly and everything in between comes in different textures and densities. Straight hair can be any hair type without regard to texture or density. Like all other wave patterns, straight hair can be fine, coarse, or medium, dense or thin. Straight hair has a fairly regular and uniform diameter along a single strand. All right, when we're talking about diameter, we're talking about we take one strand and go down it and see, because a lot of hair, and especially this is true with curly hair, it goes along here and it's this big, and then it goes down, it's like that. Goes down, you know what I'm saying? The diameter is not consistent in curly hair. Cross sections of wavy hair are usually oval and have a fairly regular and uniform diameter along a single strand. Extremely curly hair grows in long twisted spirals. Cross sections are highly oval and vary in shape and thickness along their length. Compared to straight or wavy hair, which tends to possess a fairly regular and uniform diameter along a single strand, extremely curly hair is quite irregular. Some extremely curly hair has a natural tendency to form a coil like a telephone cord, and we call them spirals. Coiled hair usually has a fine texture with many individual strands winding together to form the coiled locks that characterize this type of hair. Coiled hair usually has low elasticity. It breaks easily and has a tendency to knot, especially on the ends. Gentle scalp manipulations, conditioning shampoos, and a detangling rinse help minimize this so that we don't be pulling on it. It's fragile, and the last thing we want to do is pull and stretch